The knife made a wet, surprised sound, and the kitchen filled with the smell of vodka and bleach. Cold tile kissed my bare feet. Warm blood ran down my ribs in a thin, stubborn line that ticked with my pulse. The refrigerator hummed like it was pretending to be the adult in the room. Alex grinned the way boys do when they find a new way to be cruel. Drama queen, he said. 8 letters, all alcohol. I pressed my palm to the wound and felt the heat slick my fingers. The sting zoomed in, then out. Training narrowed the frame. Breathe. 2 in, 2 out. Don't chase the pain. Lock the scene. Mom's laugh came from the doorway, paper thin. Emma, honestly, you're too sensitive. She set down a cake knife and wiped imaginary crumbs, bracelets clinking like excuses. Dad lifted his beer in a toast to no one. It's a scratch. She's always exaggerating. He didn't come closer. He never did. The knife on the floor winked under the ceiling light. My brother's breath smelled like citrus mixer and old anger. I registered stupid details. Salt rim on the counter, a birthday banner hanging crooked, the rag in the sink sour with lemon cleaner. I'm bleeding, I said, calm landing in each syllable. Move. Alex leaned in, voice soft. Robot can talk? His pupils had that glossy, fearless shine. He nudged the handle with his shoe. Metal squealed against tile. I stepped back, weight even, bare soles finding the crack between tiles I'd memorized as a child during the slow fights. My hand found my phone by touch. Back pocket, glass warm. Thumb, side button, breathe. The screen lit my palm, a small square of order. I swiped and held, muscle memory overriding everything my family had taught me to ignore. Omega-7, I whispered. My voice didn't shake. Activate, location on. The phone's feedback was clean, private. Omega-7 acknowledged. Vibration once, long. The lock screen flashed a dull red bar, protocol live, and then it went dark again. A good machine doing its job without applause. Mom fanned the air. Call an Uber if you must. Don't make this a thing. She rearranged the napkins as if the geometry of paper could fix blood. Dad chuckled. You play soldier on computers all day, Emma. Enough. He swallowed and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, eyes sliding to the game on mute in the next room. The cut throbbed. I pressed a dish towel to it. Cotton, cheap dye, final attempt at hospitality. The pain was coherent. The room rotated 3 degrees and then stopped when my knees locked. I set my back against the counter for leverage and looked at my brother like I was cataloging weather, gusting, volatile, not new. You did this, I said, plain. He smiled wider, teeth bright. You always wanted a scar. He said it like a gift. The back door was 10 steps. The drawer with the good tape was 3. I chose the door. My brain stacked the sequence and my feet obeyed. Silence is a weapon if you use it first. Stay, Emma, Mom said, the word shaped like an order she'd never earned. We're celebrating your brother. My hand left a small comet of red on the doorframe anyway. The night air slapped me once, cold and correct. Wet grass, distant rain, a neighbor's dryer vent breathing warm linen. A dog barked twice and then decided the world was fine. The porch light carved a square on the lawn. The towel turned from white to confession. Behind me, Dad laughed at something on his phone. Mom clinked glasses into the sink. Alex whistled 2 off-key bars of a song I used to like. I hit the sidewalk and the phone buzzed once in my palm. Clean, precise. Omega-7, response en route. ETA 0641, do not re-engage. Copy, I walked. Not a run. Training knows the difference between fleeing and moving. Crickets stitched the dark together. Streetlights made puddles of amber that I stepped through, each one a small interrogation. Hurt? Alive? Capable? Yes, yes, yes. I turned my wrist and looked at my reflection in a dark window. Hair messy, eyes level, towel pressed. I looked like the version of me nobody at that house had ever met. The one my soldiers knew. The one who didn't raise her voice because she didn't have to. Sirens are loud on TV and soft in real life. These arrived as a fact. Headlights gliding, tires whispering, the engine's low, purposeful throat. A black SUV slid to the curb, lights low but convincing. Two shapes moved like competence. Private residence pinged Omega 7, the first said, voice neutral. Emma Carter. Yes, I said. CID badges flashed, no theater, hands practiced. A gauze pack opened with a muted rip. Antiseptic bit clean, a minty cold. The towel left my skin and took heat with it. The bandage went on snug, a white belt of permission. The hospital wristband would come later. Plastic proof, a circle closed. Weapon? The agent asked. Kitchen knife, and I said, handle dinged, tip clean. Distal prints. Alex Carter. Witnesses? Parents. Barbara and John Carter. I didn't embellish with their adjectives. Immediate threat? I let the porch light die in my mind. Internal. Contained. He nodded, already texting. The other agent's radio murmured codes and names, a grammar I trusted. Time-stamped activation. Location lock. Notify JAG. Notify command. My life moved from their living room to a system that did not require approval from anyone who drank in the kitchen. Ambulance is 3 out, the agent said. We'll take your statement en route. You'll be safe. Then we collect the scene. Copy, I said. I didn't ask for mom or dad. I didn't explain Alex. I didn't apologize to the night for being loud. When the gurney clicked, the world narrowed to a rectangle of sky and the faint, clean smell of hospital. Antiseptic, plastic, cold sheets. The siren stayed modest. The ride felt like a long exhale. I watched streetlights pass and counted them like steadies on a chart. The towel in my lap had stopped trying to be helpful. The new bandage did its job without opinion. My phone blinked a silent message from Captain Ryan Moore. Got the ping, standing by, proud of your calm. Another from an unknown number. This is Captain Sarah Bennett, JAG. I'll meet you at the hospital. We'll keep this inside the lines. Inside the lines. I liked that. I closed my eyes and saw the kitchen again. The knife, the banner, the way laughter sounds when it's wrong. I let it pass through. The siren's hum stitched the present tight. Omega 7 held. My pulse steadied to the beeps the medic didn't need to narrate. In the distance, a hospital sign glowed blue-white, bright as a verdict. The medic checked my wrist, called out numbers, and tightened a strap that said stay. I did. You okay? He asked. Disciplined, I said. Good, he said, as if I'd named a blood type. The ambulance doors opened to cold air and honest light. The night peeled back and the room ahead smelled like peroxide and new paper. I turned my head once, toward home, now just a shape behind hedges and then away. I had activated the code they said was only for bigger storms. Turned out, I was the storm. The rest would be paperwork, evidence, and silence used correctly. My family liked noise. I had other tools. I grew up in a house where volume won. Jokes were currency. Accuracy was optional. If you wanted quiet, you went to the garage and listened to the water heater tick like a metronome for people who needed one. I taught myself to breathe there, 4 in, 4 out, while the laundry smelled like warm cotton and the concrete held last winter's chill. Inside, Alex performed. Mom and Dad applauded. My report cards were cute. My promotions were her computer phase. At birthdays, they staged rituals. Alex blew out candles. I refilled ice. When I finished language school with a score that made colonels raise eyebrows, Dad said, "So you type faster now?" Mom added a smile. Soft weapon. At least you're not in danger. They said, Army like a costume, and intelligence like a joke. Alex called me robot, tapped my shoulder to see if I'd flinch, then laughed when I didn't. They mistook discipline for emptiness, silence for surrender. In high school, I memorized bus schedules and escape routes because it calmed the room in my head. I read field manuals the way other kids read love stories, not because I lacked romance, but because checklists promised something no one in my kitchen did. If you do this, that will happen. I pressed my fingers to the table and learned to keep my voice clean when the air got dirty. Mom called it cold. Dad called it boring. Alex called it unnatural. I called it practice. The Army called it useful. Basics smelled like gun oil and rain on plywood. The barracks hallways sang boot heel on concrete. I loved the language. Brevity, accuracy, pace. Intelligence school taught me to hold 10 facts until the 11th made them make sense. My instructors liked that I didn't narrate my competence. My CO, Captain Ryan Moore, liked that I could brief without applause. "You're not quiet," he said once after a night op that felt like a held breath. "You're precise." At home, precision was a provocation. On Alex's 21st, he poured vodka like water and draped an arm around my shoulders when cameras came out. "Smile," he said, teeth bright, breath citrus sour. When I didn't, he whispered, "Robot," for the photo, and Mom laughed because tension always needed a laugh track. Later, I washed dishes while cake dried in the sink, and Dad clapped Alex on the back for turning out normal. I dried my hands and walked the perimeter of the backyard, counted fence posts, and pretended the moon was an eye that understood procedure. I learned to file my own life: medical, financial, emergency contacts, a single sheet in a zip sleeve at the back of my closet: protocols. When Omega 7 was added to the briefing for threats against federal personnel, the room went still in that way. It does when people meet a boundary that isn't theoretical. The code was meant for ambushes, not kitchens, but kitchens can be ambushes if the wrong people live there. I kept a training manual on my nightstand, the spine creased at composure under stress. I wrote notes in pencil: silence, surrender; calm, ma, control. I underlined them lightly so I wouldn't cut the page. I ran before dawn past houses that smelled like sprinklers on timers and coffee on delay, and I synced my stride to the cadence in my head. Left fact, left judgment, right restraint. Holidays followed a script. Holidays. Alex would tell a story that made me smaller. Dad would pour. Mom would whisk gravy as if speed could replace substance. When I graduated from a course that required compartmentalization, most adults don't manage with their feelings. Dad said, "So you're a spy now?" And Alex said, "She's a spreadsheet." And Mom said, "We're so proud," in a voice that bent the word proud until it meant polite. I documented without asking. Photos, timestamps, a line in a notes app every time a joke cut skin. It wasn't a dossier, it was a training log. My life needed proof the way a court bench needs weight. When my commander pinned on my latest eval, top block, no exclamation point, he said, "Your steadiness is not an absence." I tucked the eval behind the plastic in my binder and felt seen without being praised. There's a difference. When Alex stumbled into the house late, the front door made the same dumb sound. When he picked fights, he used volume, like volume was a credential. Volume was a... When he apologized, Mom staged it at the kitchen table under the good light, and Dad nodded like a judge who'd already decided to recess. I learned to put my back to a wall, keep the room in a semicircle, memorize where the knives lay, not because I was scared, but because training turns chaos into inventory. On the night that mattered, the banner hung low, the bleach smell rode high, and the only new thing in the room was how unnew it felt. The Omega 7 line in my pocket wasn't a talisman. It was a tool. For federal personnel under immediate threat, the manual said. It didn't say, except when it's family. It didn't say, unless they laugh. At 2 a.m. in a house that thought volume could overwrite physics, I chose a system over a tradition. They heard drama. My phone heard protocol. The kitchen heard a wet, surprised sound and then a disciplined one. Omega 7 acknowledged. The house had always rewarded noise. I was about to show it what order could do. By midnight, the cake leaned, the banner sagged, and the room smelled like frosting breath over bleach. Alex kept topping off glasses like generosity could be measured in vodka. Mom clapped at nothing. Dad refreshed the score on mute, the TV flashing touchdowns no one earned. "Speech!" Alex shouted, swaying. "Robot speaks." He tapped a fork against a glass. The sound was thin and mean. I kept my back to the counter, palms flat, feeling the seam between tiles with my fingertips, home's only straight line. "Happy birthday," I said, even because my training manual didn't have a section for appeasing, only de-escalate, act, document. He leaned close, citrus sour on his breath. "Smile, Emma." A shove, not a nudge. "Enough," I said, tone flat, the way you talk to weather. His grin went bright. Showtime. The knife flashed, quick and stupid, and found my side. Heat popped. The room narrowed to a red bead and the smell of metal under lemon. Mom's bracelet clinked. Dad's beer hissed. Alex laughed like he'd tripped me on a staircase, not open skin. Drama queen, he said. Look at her face. My face didn't move. My hands did. Towel, pressure, left hand. Right hand, phone, thumb, side button, breath, 2 counts. Composure under stress, my note said. Silence, anchors, control. The lock screen woke to the kitchen's ugly light. I swiped and held. The protocol screen came up, small and absolute. Omega 7 for federal personnel under immediate threat. The button didn't tremble. I did not ask anyone for permission. Omega 7, I said. My voice was a low click. Activate. Omega 7 acknowledged. The vibration crawled up my wrist like a new pulse. Location locked, time stamped. 802-1137, do not re-engage. Mom laughed thin. She's making this a thing. Dad gestured at the screen. Put that away. Alex leaned in, pleased. Robot called her robot friends. He was still talking when the phone took 3 photos on its own. Wound, floor, knife on tile, each stamped with location and time. The red bar at the top of my screen glowed, steady as a runway light. I felt my body settle into the line between panic and procedure where I've always lived best. Emma, Mom said, soft and scolding. Don't ruin Alex's night. I'm bleeding, I said. You're on record. I stepped sideways, never turning my back. Left hand holding pressure, right thumb hitting the second tile on the protocol screen. Notify, command, JAG, CID. The phone answered like a good soldier. Cap Moore, notified. JAG, standby, CID, en route. Alex rolled his eyes. You'll get me in trouble. You got you in trouble, I said. He kicked the knife handle. It squealed against tile and spun to a stop. The TV flashed another silent touchdown. The smell of bleach went sweet under heat. My training manual's sentence floated up with no effort. You are not here to win an argument. You are here to survive, secure, report. I backed toward the door. The hallway felt cooler, a draft through the weather stripping. My blood slowed under the towel, proof of good pressure. The phone buzzed once. ETA 0641. My own clock read, go 2.13. Long time on a bad carpet, short time on a protocol clock. I chose the clock that respected me. Stay, Mom said. Sit down, we'll talk. I opened the door. Air, wet grass. Outside sound, sprinklers, tires on distant asphalt. Honest, indifferent. I tapped the door frame once with my knuckles, the way I do before stepping off a ramp. Habit acknowledged, not magic. On the porch, I photographed the bloody towel, my arm, the door, the banner, the knife through the gap, angles that would matter to people who respect angles. My pulse rode the phone's haptic like a metronome. 02-14-22. 02-14-29. 02-14-36. Behind me, Alex tried a new script. It was an accident, Dad added. Family misunderstanding. Mom, please don't call anyone. Don't call. The house had always believed volume could erase physics. Omega 7 did not share that theology. I walked to the curb under the orange street lamp. The cold leaked through concrete into my heels. I breathed the way I teach juniors in a windowless room when the simulation gets too loud. 4 in, 4 out. The shaking moved to my elbows and then left. My phone lit with a new line. Key apt. Sarah Bennett, JAG. Secure location. No contact. I'm inbound. Then, capped. Ryan Moore. You did right. Hold the line. The front door opened behind me. Dad's silhouette, then Mom's. 2 shapes framed by kitchen light and a crooked banner. Emma. Dad called, still in his inside voice. Come back in. I didn't turn. I took 1 step farther into the pool of streetlight and raised the phone to eye level so the camera could see my face steady. Emma Carter, I recorded, the words crisp. Omega 7 activated at 0211. Federal personnel under immediate threat. Assailant, Alex Carter. Witnesses, Barbara and John Carter. Scene secured by exit, awaiting CID. I hit send. The sound was small and final, like a door choosing the right side of its hinge. A neighbor's porch light blinked on, no curtain twitch, just curiosity. The night smelled like watered lawns and cooling asphalt. 0216, I tasted copper, then nothing. The towel held. From the doorway, Alex tried one last line. 8 words like always. Robot, don't make this worse for you. I kept my eyes on the dark end of the street where quiet engines approach. You already did, I said. Headlights turned the corner, low, steady, unspectacular. My phone buzzed once, the vibration running bone to bone. Arrival 0641, on scene. The house stayed lit and noisy behind me. The curb felt like a bench outside a courtroom I hadn't walked into yet. The rest would be systems. My family loved theatrics. I had evidence, and a silence that finally meant peace. The ER smelled like peroxide and printer heat. Fluorescence flattened color. The curtain rings whispered along the track when a nurse pulled them half closed. A tech cut the towel away, cotton peeled wet from skin. And the antiseptic's cold bit clean. The bandage went on snug, a white belt that told my body we were contained. CID logged the room like a crime scene, not a family dispute. The senior agent, square jaw, no appetite for theater, stood at the foot of the gurney with a tablet that hummed softly. Omega-7 activation received at 2:11:37, he said. Location lock valid. Auto captures attached. He swiped. The screen showed 3 photos I hadn't watched the phone take. The knife, the floor, the banner's crooked edge. Each stamped time, date, coordinates. It felt like a second pair of eyes had stayed behind to witness while I walked out. Statement? He asked. I spoke clean. Assailant, Alex Carter. Witnesses, Barbara and John Carter. Immediate threat ended by exit. Scene unsecured upon departure. Evidence on scene. Kitchen knife, red rag, blood trail from sink to doorframe. He typed as I spoke. No nods, no winces. The sound of the keys was a metronome I could breathe to. Captain Sarah Bennett arrived in quiet blues with a clipboard and a tone that made the room stop reaching for adjectives. Private Carter, she said by rank out of respect, then corrected because she'd read my file. Sergeant Carter, I'm Captain Bennett, Jag. We'll keep this inside the lines. Her voice carried the soft paper rasp of court filings and the cool of organized thought. She checked the bandage with 2 fingers, looked at the CID log, then at me. You did the right thing. We proceed by evidence. Copy, I said. My throat had that post-adrenaline rawness. Water tasted like metal and permission. Captain Ryan Moore pinged me with a short text I didn't have to read twice. Leave approved. Safe house on base. We've got you. Mini turn. A hospital phone on the wall began to ring, shrill in the antiseptic quiet. The nurse glanced at the caller ID, then at me. Carter residence, she mouthed. CID shook his head. Bennett's palm hovered. No. The nurse let it ring into a recorded prompt, then clicked Do Not Disturb with a neat finality that ought to be available for people too. Bennett slid a form onto the tray, the paper still warm from the printer. No contact order request, she said. We'll file with the county now and a parallel command directive for base housing and your duty spaces. You sign. We serve. Her pen made a smooth, practical sound across the line where my name went. The ink dried without flourish. Mom texted 3 times while the nurse retaped the IV. Family misunderstanding. Come home. We can fix this. Don't ruin Alex's career over a little accident. I forwarded the thread to Bennett without commentary. She scrolled, face unreadable, and tapped Add to Evidence. Dad left a voicemail I didn't play. Timestamps exist for a reason. Alex tried a fresh tone. Lowell, you called the feds. Insane. Delete it. The phone buzzed with a new number, a local reporter fishing for the story. I silenced the device and slid it under the hospital blanket like contraband I'd already turned over. Bennett set her own phone face down and said, We'll take press when it serves us, not when it feeds them. CID finished photographing the bandage, the wrist bracelet, the sticky-backed barcode on my chart that would later match everything else. We'll collect the weapon, the agent said. Local PD will assist. Our request, our chain. Your activation logged the kitchen's coordinates into evidence before anyone could mop. You're expecting a mop, I said. Family's tidy, he said. Systems record. They moved me to a quieter room. The air conditioner rattled once like a small confession, then steadied. Beneath the blanket, my training manual's line replayed where it lived in muscle. You are not here to win an argument. You are here to survive, secure, report. The whiteboard at the foot of the bed listed a nurse's name in dry erase blue. I wrote my own line beneath it in small print. No contact without Bennett present. By morning, the ankle of my wound hurt more than the center, which is how bodies teach you what they plan to keep. The bandage smelled faintly of alcohol wipes and fabric. Bennett returned with a file folder thick with premature order, the Omega-7 log, my recorded statement, a parallel CID narrative, and a one-page cover letter with 4 sentences and no adjectives. We'll drop this on the county clerk's desk at 9, she said. Hearing by week's end. We'll push for sooner. Alex's side? I asked. They'll go for story, she said. We'll go for timestamps. Minnie turned. The smear began at 10:17. My phone vibrated once with a screenshot from a friend. Local buzz site headlined, Family Misunderstanding, Cold Sister Tries to Federalize House Argument. A cropped photo of me at a cookout, no uniform, no context, sat beside a quote from an anonymous family member. She's robotic and unstable. The comments section tried to congeal into a narrative it could enjoy. Bennett read the page without sighing. Don't respond, she said. We answer with filings, then with a courtroom. She texted public affairs, standby, no statements. She CC'd more, containment in effect. CID pinged from the kitchen, photos of a wiped counter, a damp mop head in the trash, the knife in an evidence bag, handle dimpled with prints, blade clean, blood traced to the floor and my door frame, not the sink. The shots labeled themselves. Euro 2, Pian 19, water on floor. Euro 2.21, counter partially dry. Euro 2.22, suspected bleach. The red Omega-7 banner on my activation log sat above it like a header nobody on that website could scroll past. Airtight, Bennett said. She underlined timestamp with quick, light pen strokes. I prefer dull cases. This wants to be boring. The safe house on base was a box that smelled like detergent and new carpet. The blinds stayed level. The coffee maker made honest coffee. I tucked my training manual under the lamp and my promotion certificate under the tray where I put my ID at night. Evidence and emblems share a drawer in my life. Captain Moore met me at the threshold like a phrase I didn't have to explain. Leave is authorized, he said. Your team's tasks redistributed. Your inbox triaged. He didn't attempt comfort. He brought a paper bag with breakfast and a small toolkit. A new phone case, a charger, a legal pad, and an ink pen that didn't skip. Tools are a kind of respect. We drilled the day's rhythm like a patrol. Bennett to court filings, CID to the house, PA to quiet, me to rest and report. I slept in a room that sounded like air, not opinion. When I woke, the smear had multiplied by 3 outlets, and one cousin with a long memory and a short attention span. Robot sister. Emotional issues. The keywords were lazy and familiar. Bennett texted, We'll file defamation holds after the criminal matter. Do not chase. I sent her my documentation. The photo series, the activation log, the hospital admission time, the nurse's badge number, the bracelet's barcode, and 3 lines from my training manual. She added each to the folder with a click that felt like wait. Mom tried again. He's sorry. Come home for dinner, then don't bring your army people. I archived both messages into a folder labeled Noise and took a photo of that choice for my own record. Simulations teach you to capture your own behavior. Courts appreciate it more. In the mirror, the bandage cut a neat white line across my side. It would shrink to a thin sentence in a year. I touched its edge and felt the conscious control I'd built since the garage days, when I trained my breath next to the water heater's tick. Silent surrender. Calm, control. The manual's ink hadn't faded where I underlined it lightly. Mine hadn't either. By dusk, CID had filed the initial charge affidavit. Bennett had scheduled the first hearing. Moore had set my duty status to protected, a tiny phrase with a long reach. Local news wanted a face. They got a docket number. State verus Alex Carter. Assault on federal officer. The notation sang without melody. Federal enhancement reserved. They cut B-roll of the courthouse steps instead of my childhood lawn. Mini turn. Alex finally texted a string that started with bravado and ended with fear. Take it back. You can. It was a joke. Emma, I'll tell them you slipped. The last message arrived without punctuation, like breath he couldn't catch. Bennett screenshotted and replied from a number he couldn't keep. Cease contact. Counsel only. Then she added the messages to the folder that now had tabs. At 20 Hakirs, the safe house windows turned from mirrors to quiet squares. I brewed coffee strong enough to scrape away habit and opened my training manual to the dog-eared page. I wrote across the margin in neat block letters, the way Captain Moore likes reports to look. I didn't go loud, I went correct. Underneath, smaller. Discipline isn't emotionless. It's focus under fire. The phone buzzed one more time. Public Affairs confirming the courthouse date and a bench assignment. Judge Harper, Ninth Circuit, strict docket. Bennett's message followed. Wear plain. Bring nothing that rattles. We'll do this the way the system likes. Boring. The bandage itched. I didn't scratch. I stacked the court papers on top of the legal pad, set the phone face down, and wrapped my hand around a mug that smelled like competence. The house settled. The AC clicked. The blinds didn't tremble. They wanted a narrative war. I brought them timestamps. Tomorrow would be wood benches, a judge who didn't clap, and the only sound I meant to make. Answers that fit on the record. My family performed. I prepared. The courtroom would prefer my dialect. The county courtroom smelled like wood polish and recycled air. The bench loomed in matte walnut. The seal above it caught no light. I sat at counsel table with Captain Bennett, blues pressed, hair neat, a legal pad squared to the edge the way a rifle aligns to a sling. My training manual rode thin in my bag, dog-eared on composure under stress. I didn't need to touch it. The pages lived in bone. Alex took his seat at the defense table in a suit that fit like a dare. His jaw worked gum he didn't have. Our parents hovered a row back. Mom smoothing a program that wasn't hers. Dad adjusting cufflinks he hadn't earned. The clerk called, State versus Alex Carter, and the room shuddered into the stillness that precedes a fact. Judge Harper entered. Robes quiet, gaze unfooled. Be seated. Defense stood first, voice warm as a fundraiser. Family misunderstanding, Your Honor. Emotions ran high. Our client regrets. Regret is not a defense, Judge Harper said, not looking up. The defense swallowed and gestured toward me. She's dramatic, robotic, cold. He smiled small. She overreacted. Captain Bennett rose. No preamble. The state calls Sergeant Emma Carter. The oath tasted like dry air. I sat, palms flat, elbows off, voice tuned to the band of truth that registers on microphones without courting them. Sergeant Carter, Bennett said, tone level. State your occupation. Army Intelligence, I said. Analyst and section lead. On the night in question? Home for my brother's birthday. 0211, kitchen. Describe what happened. Verbal escalation, then a knife. Stab wound left flank. I kept my cadence clean. I applied pressure, activated omega-7, exited the threat. Bennett nodded once as if to say good pace. She slid an exhibit binder onto the dock cam. The monitor bloomed blue-white, evidence hum. Exhibit A, omega-7 activation log, she said. The red header sat across the screen like a siren made of font. Omega-7 acknowledged. 02-1137, location locked, do not re-engage. She traced each line with the tip of her pen. Time-stamped, geotagged. Exhibit B, auto-captured photos, 02.1140 to 47. Knife on tile, blood trail, banner. Each image carried its own clean little caption. Time, date, coordinates. The jury leaned forward. The benches creaked, a low ship sound. Defense popped up. Photos without context. Exhibit C, Bennett said over him, not unkind, not moved. Hospital intake, 0231. Vitals, wound description, nurse barcode, chain intact. On the screen, a wristband, plastic reflecting fluorescence. My chart's sticky barcode, the wound in a neat frame, sterile now, undeniable. The courtroom thinned to its instruments. Projector fan, the whisper of paper. someone's pen stuttering and then learning the tempo. Bennett slid one more page under the lens. Exhibit D, CID report. Scene secured at 0243, bleach present. Counter partially dry, knife bagged, latent prints, Alexander Carter. She let the name land. Witness statements declined on advice of family. Defense tried again, voice a shade higher. This is a kitchen, not Kandahar. My parents flinched. The judge raised his eyes. Bennett took a half step closer to the well. Sergeant Carter, did you raise your voice? No, I said. Did you threaten? No. What did you do? I followed procedure, I said. I survived, secured, reported. Defense pivoted to me. You're unemotional, Sergeant. Unemotional. I'm precise, I said. It's not the same. He smiled like a man who thinks charm equals logic. Isn't it true that you're cold, that you provoked, that you... Counsel, the judge said, bored. Ask a question that lives. He shuffled papers. You could have kept this in-house. I'm federal personnel, I said. Threats aren't in-house. He reached for a final straw. You hate your brother. I respect myself, I said. That's the difference. Bennett didn't look at me. She looked at the judge and held silence until it meant something. Then, calm. Nothing further. Alex took the stand because men like him think rooms bend on eye contact. He gripped the rail the way he gripped beer bottles, performative. It was an accident, he said. She's always so dramatic. How did the knife enter her body? Bennett asked. Silence. He blinked. Did it leap? Bennett said, dry as a desert. He shrugged. She slipped. Bennett held up a photo, blood on the doorframe, not the sink. Where? He stared. The projector hummed. He found his 8 words. She made this worse. She called the feds. I called a protocol, I said, but not to him, to the record. Mom stood halfway in the gallery and whispered, Emma, please. Dad hissed, sit. The judge lifted a hand. One more sound and I clear the benches. Bennett set down her pen like a gavel's little sister. No further questions. Judge Harper leaned forward. The room drew in, the way lungs do before the first lap. I've heard enough, he said, voice low. Sergeant Carter activated a federal protocol, documented an assault, and exited a threat. The state's evidence is clean, cold, and correct. The defense offers story. This court prefers timestamps. He turned to Alex. You are adjudged guilty of felony assault. Federal enhancement reserved. You are remanded. To my parents. You will observe no contact conditions or find yourselves charged with interference. Family is not a shield. He lifted the restraining order forms. They crackled like honest paper. Orders issued. Effective now. Defense opened his mouth. The judge closed it with a look. He turned to me. Sergeant Carter, do you wish to be heard? I stood, palms flat on the table so the wood could steady me. My voice fit the room. You tried to rewrite the story, I said to the air, to the bench, to the part of my life that still believed loudness wins. But the evidence wrote its own ending. Silence fell, a correct, respectful thing. Then the back row rose, first a deputy, then 2 veterans in worn jackets, then 3 civilians who had learned something in the last hour. Stand moved forward, slow and clean, no clapping. Alignment instead of entertainment. Alex's cuffs clicked, small and metal, a sound the room accepted. Mom sank. Dad stared at the grain of the bench as if it could rescue him. Judge Harper signed the orders with a pen that didn't hesitate and handed them down. Bennett took them like she takes an objective. Steady, no smile. The clerk called the next case. Paper slid. The projector cooled. We gathered our things, legal pad, exhibits, my quiet. Outside, courthouse air smelled like sun on stone. Bennett handed me a copy of the orders. The page warmed against my palm. Next steps, she said. Boundaries, and I said. And promotion paperwork, she added, as if announcing weather. I tucked the orders into my bag beside the training manual. The spine pressed through canvas, 2 kinds of discipline sharing space. Behind us, the courtroom returned to its docket hum. Ahead, the system kept moving. So would I. The hallway outside the courtroom smelled like copier heat and old varnish. I pressed the restraining order flat against the wall. The paper warmed under my palm. Captain Bennett slid her copy into a folder with tabs that didn't wiggle. "Command has your status locked," she said. "No contact enforced. PA stays quiet." "Copy," I said. The word fit like rank. My phone buzzed. Voicemail stacked like dishes. Mom first. "We can fix this. Dinner?" Dad next. "Come home. Be reasonable." Alex from county somehow. "Take it back." 8 words or less still. I archived each into a folder labeled noise and documented the choice. Protocol doesn't gloat. It records. Back on base, the safe house smelled like detergent and new keys. I set the court papers beside my training manual, edges aligned, corners true. Captain Moore knocked once and stepped in, coffee in a cardboard tray. "Promotion list posted," he said, tone neutral to keep the air level. He handed me the memo, thick paper, sharp cut. Promotion. Staff Sergeant. Effective immediately. The ink was precise, no exclamation point. "Congratulations," he added. "Thank you," I said. The room didn't tilt, it clicked. Mini turn. Mom texted a photo. My childhood kitchen, court papers spread like placemats. "He's your brother. Don't ruin his life." I stared at the image until the light bled out of the screen. Bennett, CC'd on everything, replied from the cooler world of law. "Mrs. Carter, cease direct contact. Counsel only." Then to me, "You owe them nothing." I slid the phone face down and opened my manual to the page I'd underlined years ago. Silence, surrender. Calm, control. I traced the line with one finger until the jitter left my wrist. CID's update arrived by email. Timestamped, courteous. Prosecution filed. Bond denied. The line "Federal Enhancement Reserved" sat like a clean blade. I printed it, hole punched, added it to the binder. Paper remembered while people spun. At the training unit, the building smelled like dry marker and HVAC dust. My name tagged a door that used to be my instructor's. The label peeled at one corner like a reminder to press every edge. "Welcome, Staff Sergeant," the admin said, sliding me a ring of keys that clinked like small medals. The classroom's whiteboard waited, blank and honest. I wrote the first lesson title in block print. Boundaries, Systems over Drama. The marker squeaked once, corrected itself. Recruits filed in, back straight, eyes curious, and settled with the polite weight of people who haven't had to testify yet. "My scar is small now," I said, voice steady. "My protocols are not." A hand went up, fresh sleeve, nervous line of jaw. "Sergeant, what about family?" the private asked. "When they don't believe you?" "Use the system," I said. "Boundary, paper, bench." I tapped the manual on my desk. Emotion doesn't lose. It just doesn't lead. I taught them omega-7 in neutral tone. The trigger phrase, the auto capture, the directive, do not re-engage. I walked them through documenting in the moment. Angles, timestamps, witness lines. The projector hummed. The room smelled faintly of hot plastic and coffee grounds from the break room. I showed them a redacted slide of my activation log. Name blocked, time left. "You don't have to be loud, Ike," I said. "You have to be right." Between classes, Captain Moore leaned in the doorway. "Graduation speech if you want it," he said. "Keep it boring." "I always do," I said, and he smiled at the truth of it. Parents tried a different angle, voicemail number 3. "We're proud, come home." Then number 4. "Don't bring the army." The 5th arrived soft. "We miss you." I archived each into noise. I wrote a new rule on an index card and taped it inside my locker. Respect is daily, not televised. The tape's cotton fuzz scratched my knuckle. The card lay straight. At night, the safe house sang AC in distant cadence from the drill field. Boots on concrete, counted soft. I ran before dawn, heel-toe kissing asphalt, lungs measuring the dark. Streetlights laid down their usual amber coins. My scar tugged once, then forgot to complain. The air smelled like wet lawns and the honest metal of early morning. Bennett scheduled the sentencing. The judge put words where they belonged. Time served nowhere, time assigned precisely. Alex glared. The cuffs spoke. My parents clutched programs printed by a system that didn't care for theatrics. When the bailiff called the next case, I exhaled and the breath didn't snag. Promotion day came with stale coffee and a flag that never needed applause. I pinned the new chevrons while the room buzzed with fluorescent lights and one slow clap that stopped at a respectable count. Captain Moore shook my hand and handed me a certificate that smelled faintly of toner and dignity. Teach them what you learned, he said. I said. I ended the week with a module titled Discipline Under Fire. One slide, one sentence. Focus is a feeling you choose. I told them about benches and courtrooms and the correct uses of silence. I told them what Captain Bennett told me in a hallway outside a judge's door. Our job is not to win arguments. It's to build cases that don't care who's shouting. Heads nodded. Pens wrote. The projector fan sighed. On Friday night, my phone buzzed one more time. Mom again, voice text blinking. I didn't play it. I took a photo of the lock screen and filed it under noise with the rest. Then I powered the phone down, set it on the court papers, and rested my palm on both. The bench I carried and the manual I obeyed. Outside, the flag snapped once and settled. Inside, the classroom clock clicked a minute forward with the tiny honesty I've always loved. I had moved my life out of their volume and into systems that made space. The scar itched less when I taught. The bench felt closer than the kitchen. Resolution was a ceremony I chose, not a pyre I survived. 1 year out, the scar was a pale thread. No longer conversation, just a footnote my skin kept for accuracy. My desk smelled like dry marker and new paper. The training manual lay open to the page I'd underlined years ago. Silence, surrender. Calm, assured control. The ink hadn't faded, neither had I. At graduation, the auditorium hummed with recycled air and pressed uniforms. My class sat straight, boots aligned like a quiet promise. The court bench from town hovered in my memory, matte walnut, no applause, and set my tone. I kept my remarks short, the way systems like it. Focus is a feeling you choose, I told them. When chaos asks you to shout, answer with procedure. You don't need to be loud to be right. I lifted the manual once, a small emblem in a big room. Discipline isn't emotionless, it's focus under fire. They stood, stand by instinct, not performance, then sat because we had work to do next. After, I shook hands, signed 2 manuals, and slid a printed Omega-7 guide across a table to a private whose eyes flicked like someone who knew kitchens could be ambushes. Memorize the line, I said. Say it calm. Leave loudness to the siren. Back on base, I pinned my promotion certificate above the whiteboard where it could remind me that progress likes paper. The restraining order lived filed and boring. The court's order had yellowed at the edges the way honest pages do. The system continued without needing my anger to power it. That was the point. My parents tried, then tried differently. We're proud. We're family. He's doing better. Dinner? I archived their messages into the folder labeled Noise, a clean, unemotional move. Respect is daily, not televised. I chose my peace and let the system carry my boundaries when sentiment would have made a mess of them. On Sundays, I ran the perimeter road, listening to cadence carry over concrete like a low, reliable drum. The air smelled like dew and machine oil. I touched my side once, a habitual check, and felt nothing but a line that chose not to complain. The court bench in my head stayed available, a place of order I could sit on anytime my past tried to turn up the volume. Captain Bennett sent a photo from a courtroom 3 counties over, another victim's evidence binder, tabs neat, a new bench preferring timestamps. Quiet win, her text read. I replied with the only word that fit the job. Copy. Captain Moore forwarded a note from higher about our module. Boundaries, systems over drama. Being adopted by 2 more brigades. I printed the memo, hole-punched it, and slid it in the binder beside the court order. Emblems and evidence still sharing a drawer. When I set up the next class, I wrote a single sentence on the board and left it up all week. You tried to rewrite the story. But the evidence wrote its own ending. No attribution, no flourish. Just the shape of how quiet wins. On the anniversary, I walked past the courthouse steps, sun warming the stone, to the same honest heat it gave everyone. Inside, cases shuffled forward, names called, paper logged. Nobody recognized me, which was a mercy and a proof. I sat at the back for a minute, listened to the clerk read the docket, the judge say, next, and felt the old sting turn to a steadiness I'd spent a year rehearsing in classrooms. That night, one more text from home lit my phone. We miss you. I took a screenshot, filed it, and powered the device down. Silence filled the room the way order does. On time, under budget, useful. I opened the manual, smoothed the page, then shut it with a sound that felt like a door closing correctly. I had rebuilt a life measured in clean lines, protocols that answered, court benches that held, students who learned that calm is a weapon. The scar was just a sentence now, the rest was a chapter I wrote. Some fights aren't won with noise, they're won with control. If you believe justice isn't about anger, it's about systems, boundaries, and silence that finally means peace, subscribe for real revenge stories that honor self respect.